So, hey, this is my 2-year retrospective on Dr. Voldritch's experiment. I didn't expect the game to blow up so big, especially since I made it without expecting anyone to be interested in it outside of people who do hypnosis. So I designed the game basically for people who are more like veterans with hypnotism, and I literally never expected it to like blow up anywhere else. But I guess it did. I guess the only thing I would say is if you're actually like new to hypnosis, the game after this one called Lavender Labs actually teaches you about hypnosis and helps people who are more like amateurs when it comes to hypnosis what to like expect out of it. So yeah, this game was more of like me just thinking that like only a tiny niche of people would be interested in it. So let's begin. So yeah, so I've tried to put like warnings in every single of my games, also because some people just like jump into hypnosis without knowing what's going on, and will just like not know what in the world they're doing. And the interesting thing about this game is that I actually didn't make it with the intent of using a visual novel maker. I actually was going to jump into Flash and make this entirely in Flash, which would be not only crappy, but I have no experience in HTML. And my lack of experience in HTML would have just made this like absolute janky game. So I had my friend Chef. You might have heard of him. He does Hypnosis, and he also has like coding experience, so he helped put together this game. That's why it's in such a weird ratio, because I designed all the assets for Flash, because I'm like a boomer at like technology, so you could tell like it's not like HD quality. So that's an embarrassing fact. So this type of dialogue that I put in, I wanted to like set up a story that you signed up for an experiment. So it's already implied that you signed up for this specific experiment and you might have done hypnosis before. So it could have been like maybe a few days trial to get used to hypnosis within like the lore of the story, and then you sign up for like the full trial. So that's why there's like mention so that you can't remember stuff, is because you've probably just been like chilling with Voldritch before this. Or Voldritch fell asleep halfway through the session and he has to do it again. We don't really know. Very likely that he fell asleep in the middle of the session before this, and you have to redo the entire thing. There he is, he's sleeping. The absolute numbskull, the guy who prides himself on being a professional, falls asleep in the middle of every session. Yeah, he's just desperately trying to like act like he totally isn't like sleeping on the job. So the thing about Voldritch is he predates this game at least by like 2 years about. The context behind why he exists is you would have to understand like the hypnosis community and the context behind how it functions. So I made a comic parodying it. You can find it on my webtoons. It's called Bloof Comics. And so the idea was that it takes place in our universe. But if our universe had a sci-fi and fantasy element. So essentially, he's a mad scientist who has to deal with like real world situations. And the joke about the hypnosis community is like all of it is NSFW hypnosis. So people who want to do like normal hypnosis have to deal with this shit, but with the caveat is that fantasy and sci-fi elements exist. So Vulture just sort of like, I guess you could say, the lone wolf of the hypnosis world, and he has to deal with this shit on a daily basis. So that's why at the end of the game you get romance options. It's not because it's like a dating sim. A lot of people think it's a dating sim. There's romance options at the end of the game because it's supposed to be um, a a reference to how real world hypnosis is just a pain to deal with, and that sometimes he just gets crazy subjects that he has to just boot out of his experiments. Now, with the music, when I added it, I was trying to get something like very trancy. Usually, what I do is I add like a lot of like tremolo to it, like it pans back and forth in each ear. It's very like, I guess you could say, lo-fi sounding, and that's specifically the intent for it. That the slow beat lines up with your heartbeat, as he says, and the sort of like floaty aspect of it's supposed to make you relax more. So I've done like ambient music for like years. It's the most easiest thing to produce. So I had a really fun time producing that for this. Also, the dialogue. The interesting thing behind the dialogue is that he doesn't do like normal hypnosis you might see inside like a medical textbook, but it's kind of like a mixture of like a regular induction with like recreational hypnosis. The specific reason why he does this is because that's just the type of hypnosis I prefer. I don't like self-help hypnosis. It's just at some point you kind of like have to like go insane when people just are like saying you're like perfection. You're like, it's basically like the live, laugh, love of hypnosis, and I personally don't like that. So I gave Voldritch a more like mysterious vibe, since that's just something that works for me personally. But my later hypnosis games, Revenge of Mesmeglitter, which came out last month, has new age hypnosis in it, which is like a mixture of like self-help and spiritual. And that might be something for people who don't like this type of hypnosis. They might find it too spooky because it has like a creepy mad scientist and all that stuff. So if you want to play like a game without like spooky hypnosis stuff, it's more of an aesthetic really than anything. It's not really meant to actually like scare you. It's just supposed to be like, oh, mysterious. It's like an aesthetic thing. But my more recent game has like hippy dippy regular self-help motivational hypnosis, if that's something you like. And a lot of the elements in here I just added. A lot of it's for like theatrical purposes. Like the intent for Voldritch is that he wants to take over the world as fast as possible, and in order to do that, he wants to gain rapport with the person really fast. So a lot of his dialogue is designed to, I guess, like lure you in and be more interested in his personality. When in reality, he's not really much of an evil villain at all. I have tons of comics with like his personality, and this is just how he acts when doing hypnosis. Outside of hypnosis, he's kind of just like I guess you could say, a friggin' like dumbass hippie, because he basically tests on himself the entire time. Like, this guy is a stoner in denial, if I could describe it like that. And the other thing about him is that this actually isn't the first time he's appeared in hypnosis-related content. There's a video on my YouTube channel called the 360 Brainwashing Experiment, which predates this game. And you basically get to interact with him in a 360 environment. So you can like look around his lab and everything. And I don't think many people know about this. Like, most people just know about the games, but there's actually a YouTube video that I made that's like an interactive experience where Voldritch hypnotizes you within his lab, and you can see his lab, you can see his instruments and everything. And I think it came out like 2 or 3 months before this game. And specifically why I made it and specifically picked him was because since my comic was like a parody on the hypnosis community, there wasn't like a single hypnotist within the entire comic that was like reputable or even nice. And so I just picked him because I was like, you know what, this generic science dude, he's professional. He seems like a normie, so he'd probably make a better hypnosis file than half of the weird hypnotists I have. And of course, there's the rat. There's a rat getting the belly rubs. This is before I even had pet rats, so I had no idea that rats don't actually like belly rubs. They like to be tickled, but they don't like belly rubs. Apparently, they only start liking belly rubs until they're like elderly and they just stop caring, and then you could just rub their bellies constantly. Yeah, so the reason I gave head pats is kind of like, I guess maybe an inside, not an inside joke, but something that happens within the hypnosis community. People seem to really like giving like suggestions about patting your head. And I specifically made it so you could like choose between either agreeing to it or not, as I'm aware that like if you're doing hypnosis you might not be comfortable with getting head pats. Even if it's like a cartoon hypnotist, it would still, you still get the option showing that he's not completely evil. So let me check the yeah one. So yeah, that's actually common to get head pats, like when you do recreational hypnosis. I don't know why. I've just like basically been like head pat pilled by hypnotism. Like everyone likes the head pats when doing like suggestions, so why not? You get the head pats. I guess that would make it maybe anime inspired, wherever it started from. So I guess you could say that maybe Voldritch is an anime. The other thing about hypnosis is that you could basically experience almost anything. It's basically your mind is your only limitation. So some people who might actually get really deep into this file will actually feel someone actually petting their head. Like some people are so creative and imaginative when it comes to hypnosis that they can actually feel things that aren't there. But some can't. They could just imagine it. But it can be extremely vivid for some people. Like some people can actually like feel Voldritch within the room with them, depending on how like intense hypnosis is to certain people. So that's sort of an interesting thing. Like when he says that he scratches under your chin, some people who are very receptive to hypnosis might actually feel that on like a, I guess almost like a super realistic experience. So that's something interesting I wanted to include. I included a lot of files that there's like a tactile experience that most people who do hypnosis who never did it before have no idea that it actually works like that. When it comes to hypnosis, really, the only limitation is basically your imagination. Like, there are hypnosis files out there that are clearly like bunk, where they like tell you they could cure your cancer, which cannot happen. Like, it's very obvious it's just a scam. It's like dumb, like magic bullshit. But like when it comes to things like feeling head pats or like tactile sensations, that can happen. It just depends on how you experience your imagination. It's kind of like how you imagine things in your mind. Like some people, I know there's like an experiment where like you imagine an apple in your mind, and some people can see the apple, some can't. Some can see it in color, some can see it in like black and white. And that's kind of similar to hypnosis. Like everyone experiences differently and can experience it in all different sensations. And and all different ways, which I find extremely interesting. And a lot of the dialogue you read here is actually not dialogue that I invented. It's actually just really basic, generic hypnosis dialogue. Like, super generic. Like, if you've done hypnosis for many years, you'd be like reading this and be like, wow, this is super generic. And which I find kind of funny, because like a lot of people playing this game, it seems to lump it in with like this new like evil villain yandere dating sims, and they think that the dialogue is like dating sim dialogue, and I'm like, no, this is like generic hypnosis dialogue. Which is kind of funny. Like, half of these people never did hypnosis, so that's a shock to them. They see like really basic hypnosis dialogue. Some of this dialogue I added on my own, specifically for the aesthetic, but most of it is really basic dialogue you would hear any hypnotist use. I could also describe his like induction style as a mixture of authoritarian, I can't pronounce it, authoritarian and permissive. So if you look up actual hypnosis, there's two types. One where the hypnotist tells you what to do, and then one where the hypnotist is more of like a guide who says, you can do whatever you want, I don't care. So he's like a mixture of that. And this is like actual hypnosis, like induction styles that you could like look up. It's not just like something I made up on the end. It's kind of like a lot of stuff I researched before making a lot of these files. Which it still makes me kind of like laugh that like a lot of people who play this game never did hypnosis before, so they think the dialogue is like him trying to like take you out on a date. Which I guess you could say on like a metaphorical sense, that's the intent. Not date you, but like develop a rapport with you, which is incredibly important for hypnosis, is that you develop like a connection with the subject you're working at, so the subject trusts you more. That's why his dialogue is like this. He's essentially trying to be your best friend and like trying to get you interested in him emotionally. Because if he doesn't develop that rapport with you, you're not gonna like listen to the hypnosis file. Like, you're just gonna like shut it off and say it's annoying. So that basically explains why it sounds like this. He's trying to like gain rapport with you and try to get you to like listen to him more. That's also the design. That's also the same thing with his design, that I want to make him look tired, sleepy, and kind of like, I guess, smug in a way, so that you also feel kind of tired and sleepy while looking at him. And here's the trigger. I don't know how it happened, but all of his triggers are about flowers. I'd like to just say that this is just like a random thing I just invented. Like, I don't know why all his triggers are flowers now, but now it's flowers. He's just a flowery dude. He likes his flowers. I think I was like trying to think of a trigger that's so like esoteric and complex that you're never gonna like run into it very often. Most triggers are supposed to be one word. Like, that's the basic law for creating triggers, is that they're very easy to memorize and they're very simple. And that's the basic premise for them, is that the longer the trigger is, the harder it is to remember and the less it works. And I was gonna do that, but I felt like a shorter trigger would be easier for like someone to be triggered by. Yes, triggered. Very triggered. But I feel like a longer one would most likely, people would forget it very quickly, and it would be very hard to like set it off in real life. And that's specifically why I gave him such a weird trigger. That you're never gonna see this phrase much, and the longer it is, the less likely it's gonna like affect your outside file. And slowly coming to an end. This is like an extremely experimental game. I had no idea how people would react to it. I just thought that they would just like watch it and it would only like appeal to like the hypnosis community, but now like 1 billion people are watching it, so certainly kind of surprised me. And he has to repeat it. That's just like another normal hypnosis thing. Repeat it like constantly. Repetition is like a super important thing in hypnosis. You have to constantly repeat something over and over and over and over and over again until you get it right. It's basically it's less like instantaneous. It's not really mind control. It's more like taking a test. It's like taking the SATs. You have to like constantly hammer in an idea into your mind until you get it. He'll repeat dialogue constantly, which is also a pretty normal motif in hypnosis. And now he's waking you up. I should have made it a little bit longer, like 1 to 10. I've known a lot of people who hate like the count up from 1 to 5. They say it's way too short. So I think the later files I do like 1 to 10. And we're awake. And this background music, a lot of the music was made in like an old ass version of GarageBand. So if you've ever used GarageBand, you probably recognize some of the loops because I'm a lazy ass. And yeah, now the experiment's over. And of course, he's always complimenting you and giving you triggers. Make sure you're happy. So, like, the questions he acts completely... This is how he normally acts when he gives the questions. Like, the whole hypnosis stuff doesn't, like, represent his personality. How you answer the questions actually more represents it. So, like... if you answer, like, a sleepy question, he's, like, tickled pink by it. He's more formal here. But if you answer, like, the flirtatious questions, he starts getting more and more frustrated. Like, first he seems like he doesn't seem to understand it, so he's just like, oh, that's cool. So, like, if you answer it again, he really doesn't fucking like it. Because he's, like, super professional, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to kick out this subject. Like, that's what he's thinking in his head. It's like, how can I just kick out the subject and ban them from my experiments? So, this one's like the more neutral one. The neutral one kind of makes him a little bit more, like, hesitant. In the second game, if you start clicking, like, the neutral ones, they get more and more passive-aggressive. In Lavender Labs, until it breaks the game if you keep hounding him. So there's, like, a neutral ending, and then there's a bad ending if you keep clicking, like, questions like this in the next game. It will literally soft lock your game. Well, not even soft lock, it actually hard locks the game and you can't play it. So keep that in mind. If you play the next game, you could actually get Voldritch to, like, not only get enraged with you, but prevent you from ever playing the game again. Yeah, he sometimes seems, like, oblivious to a lot of the questions like that. I think it's mostly just because he's, like, sees himself as a professional, and he doesn't really expect people to act kind of creepy around him. But usually he runs off. Yeah, this is also a long-running joke, is that everyone asks him to wear a suit. And he can't afford a suit, and he can't find one that fits him. So there's a lot of art of him just, like, wearing a suit that's like 10 sizes too big and it just hangs off of him. But if you keep, there's certain ones keep pressing. I like the sleepier ones. It's kind of cute. Yeah, this is how he usually is. He's kind of like derpy and kind of like wholesome and affectionate. In the games, he puts on like a spooky persona, but he's more of like a goof outside of this. I think I got the flirty ending. Yeah, you can see the look on his face. He knows he's gonna ban you from his experiments. There's also context to why this also exists, is that he has a stalker within the universe, and so it seems, because it takes place in our universe, there's just a lot of creepy hypnosis people, so it's implied that you are one of those weird hypnosis people that specifically chose an experiment to chase after him. So yeah, that's how it ends. And the secret you get is if you play the game a few times. And the secret is essentially just him dancing with his rats. So if you want to play this game a few times, you'll get a nice ending with him dancing with his rats. So yeah. Yeah, that's the game. It's pretty short. Never expecting it to like take off, mostly just because it was like a really short and simple project. I want to work with Chef, eventually translating it to Spanish. But in the meantime, if you want more Voldritch content, my YouTube has tons of videos with like Voldritch doing hypnosis, music, animations, my Twitter, webtoons. You could check an archive of all the comics with Voldritch in it. And there's 2 games on my itch.io with more of his content. And the newest game you should really check out is like, it has like 2 hours of like gameplay, so you can play with 3 hypnotists. You got Voldritch, you got Elijah, who's more of like a spooky hypnotist. He does even more spoopy stuff than Voldritch. And then you got New Age Bloof, and it's just like a Bloof that does like New Age wholesome hypnosis. So yeah, feel free to check out that stuff. And I'm really glad this game was like popping up.